All right, good evening, everyone.
Yes.
Let's go ahead and get started at 6 o'clock. My name is Julie Wyatt, and I'm part of the team on Jacksonians for Jackson, which is an advocate group for our city, and we kind of take action in lots of different ways. And tonight we have Ted Hinifin back with us. About 6 months ago he came and talked about our water conditions and the plan for fixing it, and then we just wanted an update, and I think we also wanted to ask about the sewer as well. So Ted, I think everyone knows who you are. We're glad for you to be here.
It is great to be back with you all. We were a very warm and receptive audience last time. And I was commenting that the audience might get smaller only because I think we're doing our job right. And so my job is, if we get it right, no one's going to show up at these meetings in the future about water. I mean, you've got lots of other things to advocate for, but hopefully we can put water in the rearview mirror in the not too distant future. But thanks for coming out tonight, because I know it's always a challenge to come listen to anybody about anything, and maybe water is not as big of a challenge to come listen to because it's still a hot topic here in Jackson. So I was going to talk a little bit about sort of where we've been since I was here last, and a little bit about where we're going, and then we'll have plenty of time to take your questions to the extent that I can answer those, and we'll figure it out from there. So this week was actually a banner week for us. Monday, the water system acted the way it's supposed to act for the first time in anybody's memory. Wow. And what does that mean? So when you design a water system, you put these elevated tanks throughout the town. You've all seen the elevated tanks. There's a bunch of them, 10 of them. And they're all designed to be at a certain elevation. And they all should hold water at the same elevation across the city. And when you pump water out of your plant, if it's all working well, you pump water out at a not terribly high pressure, but enough to get the water up in the tanks. And it goes up in the tanks at night when people aren't really using water. Because if you quit using your water, you've got capacity, the tanks fill up. And then during the day, we can keep pumping at a low pressure, but the tanks provide the pressure to the rest of the system. And so previously, we've had to run the plants upwards of 90 pounds per square inch, pretty high pressure, just to keep the system pressurized. This weekend was the first time we could back that down. So we're putting water out about 82 pounds as opposed to 90, which doesn't sound like a big difference. It's a huge difference. So they're blowing pipes out of the ground, breaking things. So we were very fortunate to be able to do that. And then we got a second stress test this week when the treatment process at O.D. Curtis had an upset and had to shut off. It shut off for 40 hours. And none of you noticed a difference because the system is working well. So these were just amazing things for us in the water business. The rest of you, we're glad you didn't notice, but it just shows the progress we've made. So the progress has largely been around leaks, and we still have a lot of leaks, and I'll talk a little bit more about leaks, but we fixed a lot of leaks. We've opened a bunch of valves. We know so much more about the system. We've got pressure monitors throughout so we can see what's going on constantly. And we've got, again, folks just working constantly out there. You've seen the crews. And we don't always get it right. We're not always there right on time, and sometimes we miss something. But overall, we're getting better and better at getting out, getting things fixed, making sure that we're cleaned up and paved afterwards. We're a little behind on our paving right now, and we were trying to keep it very close to when we do a dig on a road that we're back there within days. I know we've slipped. We're actually bringing in another paving contractor to help us catch up. During the freeze, we had about 150 breaks that we had to fix. What was interesting is we came out of the freeze better than we went in, meaning some of the breaks we fixed were already existing, we just hadn't found them at that point. So we came out of the freeze in a much better position than we went into it, which is pretty mind-boggling for us as we're trying to figure out exactly why that was. So the good news is, as of tonight, we're doing really well, still have a lot of investments to make sure that we can keep this going. So don't want everyone to just relax yet. But hopefully we're getting much closer. So the freeze, we were hoping to, I was really, really hoping to be able to tell you never noticed anything in the freeze, but you did. And many of you probably did in this area of the city. But what happened was we made it to the freeze at the plants, which was a first. There was absolutely nothing frozen up. The process continued the whole time at both plants. We were able to put a lot of water out, and we had to put a tremendous amount of water into the system. Because you all cracked your faucets to make sure that you were dripping your faucets. I actually did a little news segment the Friday before the freeze and showed a very small stream of water, like a spaghetti noodle size. And that's pretty hard to get out of your faucet. I was having a hard time getting it out of our faucet to make it work. And just that spaghetti noodle size across 60,000 customers, and say maybe they were dripping 2 faucets each, it's like 6 million gallon demand, more than we would normally have if we were just doing a spaghetti. Now, if you did do a spaghetti noodle and maybe ran it a little more, it's probably what happened, because we saw the demand go from through, and we'll talk about meters here in a minute, but we have much more visibility in the system than we did a year ago. We could see how much water was being consumed by our customers, because it was going through the meters, which report back to us electronically. And so our normal day is somewhere between 15 and 18 million gallons are going through the meters. It jumped up to about 30 million gallons during the freeze. So we knew a lot of people were dripping faucets, maybe had broken lines, but a lot of water was going through. And we were struggling to hang on at that point. Because on top of that, we still had all our leaks, our regular demand. So we were putting about 75 million gallons into the system at the peak of the freeze. So we had the freeze. Monday night, we all woke up to the ice. We were breathing a bit of a sigh of relief because plants were still functioning. We were holding our own. And then Tuesday, we made it through the day pretty well. Wednesday, things started to thaw out. Started to see the leaks, started to see the breaks. And we started seeing this demand on the system, we couldn't control it. It was in the 75 to 80 million gallons a day. We knew we couldn't sustain that. We were doing everything we could. And then we had the misinformation campaign that you may have read about, where someone posted on social media we were going to shut the plants down Wednesday night and fill up your bathtubs and jugs. And social media is a powerful tool. A lot of people decided to do it, and they did it in a very short time, and that just took us down because we couldn't manage the additional demand at that point in time. So we didn't lose the process. Many of you probably saw low pressure or a little bit of change in your pressure. But South Jackson, again, the furthest away from the plants, highest elevations, we had about 12,000 folks, we think, that were without water for some period of time, not a long period of time. And then 5 zip codes had a boil water notice for almost a week as a result of that. Because when the pressure drops at the meters below 20 pounds, we have to issue a boil water notice. So some of those people still had water, but there were definitely some that did not have water for some period of time while we got the system back up and running, pressurized, and got the demand back in. So we spent a lot of time the rest of that week looking for leaks, looking at abandoned houses, looking at abandoned properties, and we were able to get a lot of things shut down that were still losing water. You remember many of you probably know there's an old golf facility. It was a miniature golf course and driving range on North State Street. It looks like a kind of a war zone now, but at one point it was evidently a nice place. We saw it through their meter. Again, we get to see the meter reads now because we've got these meters that report back to us that there was a significant leak. We could actually see that their water was flowing through this meter. And so we went out and found that, yes, the whole area was basically giant wetlands, and we were able to shut the meter off and pull the meter out. Probably saved us 600,000 gallons a day. It was just being wasted on a vacant property. And so we're continuing to look for that. So I'm talking about these meters. A year ago, I was anti-meters. I always reserve the right to be smarter tomorrow. One of the men I worked for was like, that was his favorite saying, and I fully agree. If you get new information, new data, you can't stay in your old position if that changes it. And so, about a year ago when I first got here, in fact, I met a group of Fondren Renaissance folks in this very room, and we talked about, I didn't think the metering was going to be successful. The project was still, just getting off its ground, and that people weren't going to believe their meters, so let's just switch to a property attribute-based metering. And we had a lengthy and healthy debate, like 3 hours in this room with Fondren Renaissance folks. And at the end, I'd say the majority were kind of leaning in that maybe it made sense. And so I was sort of the direction we were trying to go when the legislature came along and dropped a bill when Governor signed that said you can't do that. So I had to regroup. And so that's the reserving the right to be smarter tomorrow. Turns out, probably a really good thing, because these meters, much to my surprise, have been incredibly valuable data gathering tools. So they do 2 things for us. We can see the flow going through it. If you call up and say, my bill's really high, you can pull up the meter and see your consumption every hour. And a normal use, there's some point in the day you're not using water if you're a normal person, right? At some point in the middle of the night, there should be no water going through your meter. And so when you look at a normal meter, there's these points in time where it goes to zero during the day, during the evening, because you're not using water 24/7. If you have a leak, it never goes to zero. So we can clearly see that there's a leak in your property, and you call and say, hey, my bill's really high, and we say, well, we're looking at your meter, you have a leak. No, I don't. Yes, you got a leak. There's water going through your meter all the time. No, I don't have a leak. And so we get in a little bit of battle sometimes with folks about, yes, you do have a leak, and if you get it fixed, we'll credit, we'll wipe all that bill off for the leak. We'll put you back at your normal consumption, and we can see as soon as you fix it. You don't have to send us a plumber's receipt or anything else. We'll see it immediately goes to zero on the times it should go to zero, and we know you fixed your leak, and so we can make that credit happen. But we are having a lot of those calls, and largely because a lot of people haven't received a bill, and definitely haven't received one from a meter read in years in Jackson. We've been estimating bills because the meters failed. We go all the way back to the Siemens thing. So we've been sending out bills based on estimates, meaning you could have had a leak for years, but it never was reflected in your bill. You had no reason to be thinking about it. And so now we come in to stick a new meter in front of your house. It's reading the real water use, and we send that first bill out, and it's $1,000. You're like, how could that be? You have a leak that you never knew you had a leak. And so we've actually had to send plumbers to some folks' houses to help them find their leaks. But for the most part, people will hire a plumber or they'll look in their house and they call us back and say, thanks, found the leak. And it's, things like just a running toilet can add up to lots and lots of water over the course of a month. And so that is one of the challenges right now with the new meters. People see a different bill than they saw before, and they immediately assume something's wrong with the meter. Most of the cases we've seen, it's been a leak on the property that's causing that. And the other thing that has happened is the estimates were not necessarily accurate from what you actually consume. So we had a public meeting Saturday. We do quarterly meetings in our building, and people can come in and talk. And I had 5 different people I talked to about their bills. None of them were upset necessarily, but they were questioning. And one of them had just got a new meter, and she showed, here's my bill, it was like $80 a month, and then new meter went in and it's $160. So we went and talked about, well, let's talk about who's in your house and how much water you actually use. And using some national averages, we walked her through it, and it actually, 160 is probably what her bill is going to be. I said, but if it changes drastically, that's when you call the call center, 601-500-5200. They can pull up your bill and they can tell you, is it got a leak? Does it not have a leak? Is it accurate? And the meters are accurate. There are no moving parts. They're ultrasonic meters. The only way they fail is if they don't communicate. And so they have to communicate from a little antenna in the meter box that sends that signal to collectors, and we've got these collectors across the city, and then the collectors send it on to our system. So if a collector doesn't have power for a day, we're not getting the read, or there is a chance that a meter fails to communicate for some reason, and that's probably we check out. But that's a pretty low number of our meters that happen. So about 98% of the meters are in the ground. That still leaves, my percentages there, there's roughly 60,000 meters going in, so 12 to 1,500 that still haven't got new meters yet, so we're still working on getting those in. Those are typically sort of hard to find. Maybe we can't figure out where the old meter was, maybe it's blocked, maybe someone's poured concrete over where the old meter was. So we're still working on those final 2%, and we'll get there. So the metering's turned out to be good, and we're going to actually spend a lot more time doing some analysis with some data folks focused on the meters on a daily basis, with the goal ultimately of being able to call you up and say, hey, we notice there's a lot of consumption in your house that's not normal. We're having a leak. And so text message or call, something like that, to help be proactive for folks to see when they're having problems with plumbing. So that's been a big improvement. Again, surprise, because I was not a meter guy. Not in favor of this, but it's turned out to have a lot of data. The other thing the meters do for us, they have acoustic listening device capability. And so because they're ultrasonic meters, they can actually listen. And so they listen all the time. They hear a baseline of water flowing, and that's sort of normal. Then if there's a break nearby, several meters will all alert that they're hearing something different, which gives us the opportunity to look and say, hey, is that a big sound? is it a bunch of meters? We need to go look in that area for a leak. And we've been very successful in finding leaks, maybe not at the exact address, around the back, around the side, but the meters heard something, it's alerted us to it. We just aren't sophisticated enough yet in our analysis and our algorithms to start really using that data. We're using it pretty well now, but we'll get much better in the months ahead. So the story is, if you have a high meter read, call us. The folks so if you call us during the regular working hours, during the week, we've got 4 folks that are highly trained in our billing system, in the meters, and they are the ones that answer the Jackson Water phone number at our billing. It's a call center, contract call center. So those 4 people are there 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. If you call about this on a weekend, they're probably going to say, we'll have to get back to you on Monday. We'll call you back when we have someone that can look at that data, because not all of the call center folks can do everything that our folks can do in there. But they can still answer your call. They'll still get you a call back. They'll take your information. They'll put it in the system. So I encourage you to call whenever you want to call. But if you're talking about wanting to really get details on your meter, you're probably not going to get that after hours on the weekend yet. We may get there at some point. So that's kind of where we are in the meter world, looking better and better every day. Everyone's bills should settle out. You'll know what your normal usage is. In the near future, by the end of the year, you'll be able to, if you sign up for our digital self-service, you'll be able to pull up your own meter on your computer or on your phone, and you'll be able to see your consumption on an hourly basis. So you'll know whether you have a meter. Sounds like modern, like moving into the 1990s or something. I don't know, we're getting there. So we'll be able to give you a lot more information at your fingertips. And so there's a couple things going on with the billing system before we can get there. So we're thinking that's 6 to 9 months away, but we will be communicating with you because we do that much better now than when I was here 6 months ago. We've hired a communications person from a consulting firm that's actually out of Louisville. She's been brilliant. We get newsletters out now. We get a lot more information in people's hands. Door hangers when we're doing work. I heard that story just from Julie a minute ago. So we're trying to be much more proactive on social media. We noticed that social media post during the freeze. We were quickly alerted to it. We got to the news. We got posted out to tell everybody it was not true, but it's too late. It already happened. Social media is crazy how fast things can happen. But we're doing a lot more on the communication side, and truly, we were not doing much at all when we started. We were busy just trying to figure out how to get water working. So we expanded now to the point where we're communicating. That'll continue to get better. We've bought big blocks of media time from WLBT. They're doing all sorts of placements, so you hear ads in weird places. I'm cheap. I listen to Pandora with commercials because I don't pay for this Pandora service. And it's wild, they've been putting ads about our billing change on Pandora. I was like, that's wild. So the placement of all this stuff is happening because we purchased this media buy from WLBT. So they've been a great partner in this. So that's where we are on the general stuff. Sewer, let's talk sewer a little bit. We got sewer under our responsibility in October, and we're making great progress. So sewer system in Jackson was a little different in the fact that there were hundreds of locations where on a clear, dry day, sewer was coming out of the ground and either running down your street, running into a ditch. That is not normal. And I think Jacksonians, unfortunately, are so conditioned by what they've gotten used to that people kind of took it for granted. I tell this story. Our office is in Belhaven Heights. And there was an overflow constantly going on at the corner of Boyd and Jefferson. And it was a mess. And I was down there taking some pictures and talking to people. And I watched the neighbors as they're walking their dogs and their kids. And they just kind of just move to the other side of the street, walk along, come back. It's like, they know it's there. It's like, but it's part of the scenery. It's just not normal. And so if you're running your regular sewer system in any other city in the United States, especially a city this size, if you had one of those, you'd be marshaling all your forces to fix it. So when we got the sewer order in October, there were 215 listed on the order. We know there were more, actually. So we've already resolved 40 some of those in the first quarter. We have 50 more under construction in some form or fashion. And most of these, you just got to dig down and either replace a section of pipe, maybe replace pipe from manhole to manhole. Sounds expensive and challenging. It really hasn't been that bad. most of those average about $15,000, and we've got a fleet of contractors that are doing that work for us and doing a great job. So we're knocking those out, and we expect to continue to see progress in that to keep the sewage from just showing up wherever. During rainstorms, unfortunately, we still have a lot of wet weather issues. So that means rain gets into the sewer system. It's not supposed to. So we have separate systems here. There's a stormwater system and a sanitary sewer system, and they're not supposed to be combined. In the Northeast, you get to older cities, DC, even Alexandria, you go further north into pretty much any of the big Northeast or Midwest cities, they were built with combined sewers, meaning the stormwater and the sanitary waste all was together. And so anytime there was a big rain, you couldn't treat it at your plant because it was overwhelmed by the capacity, and they would just discharge it into the local river. And those combined sewers have been under federal enforcement throughout the country for years as they've tried to solve that problem. And so, the one closest to me is Richmond, Virginia, and they're actually permitted to discharge like billions of gallons during a big rainstorm because they haven't been able to separate those two things. Well, we're not combined, so it should be a lot easier here. Unfortunately, there's no such thing as a sewer that doesn't get impacted by rainwater. So it finds its way into the sewer pipe in a variety of ways. It could be through cracks in the pipe in your own yard. It could be cracks in the pipes through our system. It could be that rain leaders from your house are directly connected to the sewer system. There's all sorts of ways it happens. And we're working to, at some point, we'll work to the wet weather side. But meanwhile, when it rains, we have overflows that are rainfall caused. And in really bad cases, we end up having sewage back into some people's houses. So we're really focused first on those areas to see if we can't keep that from happening, because it really ruins your day. Ruins everybody's day. It's one thing if your own toilet backs up. It's one thing, a different thing if your whole neighborhood comes through your toilet and fills your house. So I'm just saying it's not a good thing. It ruins everybody's day. So we are working hard to make sure that we can find ways to prevent that from happening. And the other problem on the sewer side, most of our waste is taken to the Savannah Street wastewater plant. So down off 55 near Byron, the Savannah Street plant's on the river side of 55 as you're heading south. And it's a 60 million gallon a day facility. It's not working real well. And again, lack of maintenance and investments. And what should happen during those big rain events, they've got 3 giant lagoons essentially, that if the capacity of the plant is such they can't treat everything coming in, they divert it into the lagoon. Then when the rainstorm ends, they bring it back into the plant. So it never actually gets in the river. Great concept. The lagoons haven't been dredged in forever, so there's little capacity there. So pretty much we're having to bypass into the river with every rainstorm, and that's got to stop. So we're focused a lot right now on fixing parts of the plant that just haven't been invested in, that should work better to put more flow through the plant, work with the Army Corps of Engineers to get the lagoons dredged so we've got more capacity there, and hopefully stop some of these bypasses in the very near future. And very near future for that, those of you who ever worked with the Army Corps of Engineers, anybody worked for the Army Corps? I don't want to insult you out here. Their calendar works a little different than most. It's a long, slow process, but they're working at rapid speed for us right now at the Vicksburg District. And the Congress gave them basically authority to spend $125 million on Jackson projects, and so we're firing them up to get it going. So going back to the billing, we need y'all to pay your bills. We need everyone to pay their bills because 125 is a great number from Congress, but it requires a match. There's a 25% local match. So we need these local revenue for any core project, and we have to pay 25% up front before they'll do the work. So we're juggling right now because we're not bringing in every dollar we need to bring in. So we will be shutting people off. I think next week, Carla, severance next week. Mm-hmm. Right. So we will be starting our shutoffs, and we're starting small to make sure. But if you're behind on your bill, we're not going to come get you right away. If you're on a new meter in a residential, you aren't the first batch. If you're on a new meter, commercial, and you've got some bill, balance backed up, we're going to be coming after them first. But then we're going to move to where we're trying to get everyone as soon as you're a day late. Because our problem has been we don't get there until they're 2 or 3 months late. And people that live in paycheck to paycheck, 3 water bills is too much. They can't recover. So if we can get there and tell them they're running late on day 31, bill's due on 30, and we get there, we send them a notice on 31 saying you're late, let us help you, pay your bill, and we've got some mechanisms to help. One, the new rate has a SNAP rate for folks that are on SNAP benefits that gives them a little bit a break on their availability charge. They still pay the same amount for water and sewer that you do per cubic foot used, but they just have a slightly different availability charge to make sure that they can actually pay their bill. And then we also created a customer assistance fund, which is through the Mississippi Community Foundation for Mississippi. And our people that answer the phone can ask them a few questions. And if they answer correctly, they'll get an immediate $100 credit on their bill, which would pay their current bill and maybe leave a balance for them next time. They can't do that. They only do it twice every 12 months. They can also set up their own payment plan on DSS or call in to get a payment plan. So we're trying to build enough flexibility to get everyone the ability to pay their bill without having to get it off. We don't like cutting off water, but that's how you get people to pay. You know, normal water utility sees 95 to 100% of their customers basically paying the bill because nobody wants their water cut off and can't live that way for very long. Unfortunately, Jackson, you guys have a lot of experience living without water, so maybe that's not a great threat. I don't know. Hopefully, we'll get to the point where it's the norm and people understand that we need all be in this together. We all need to contribute and pay our bills to make this work because there's no federal dollars for sewer. I mean, I talked about the Corps of Engineers money, which is a little bit of the federal dollars that came to us, and they can use that for sewer. But most of all of the $600 million appropriation we got is all only for drinking water. So everything else we do, we have to find local revenue to make happen. So all those sewer fixes we're making with local revenue here. So as you pay your bills, we're putting it right back into the system. Okay, where do we go from here? We've got a number of projects. You know, we haven't done any big infrastructure projects yet. You know, we're doing all this with just fixing, basically using time and material contractors, fix leaks, fix breaks, open valves, fix change out hydrants. You'll be seeing in your neighborhood if you haven't already. We're assessing every fire hydrant. We're replacing the ones that need to be replaced, fixing the ones that need to be fixed. And that, again, causes a little inconvenience because typically we'll end up with a small section of the street where we're going to either shut your water off, we're going to be down pressure, and we'll have a boil water notice for 10 people who are affected. So it's interesting, we talked to EPA, and we're actually increasing the number of boil water notices, but they affect very few people, as opposed to a citywide boil water. And it's only related to the work we're doing in the field. So it's kind of good news, but more boil water notices. Never mind, we won't go there. So we'll continue to do a lot of work. All hydrants will be assessed, replaced, or repaired throughout the city, and that's happening this year. And so by the end of the year, we should be all through the hydrants. They're assessing all the valves in the system, and the same thing there. When they don't work, we're replacing those. And then on the big side, we've got some small pipe replacement projects about to go. So I think I've talked before. We've got a number of streets in the city that are served with 2-inch diameter galvanized pipe. So if you think all of the neighborhood houses are coming out of a 2-inch galvanized pipe, which galvanized pipes over time build up rust, and so the diameter or effective diameter continues to shrink. And so those don't have effective fire flow, pressure, and color challenges because it's got a lot of rust in it. So we're on a path to replace all of those. There's 109 miles, and it's going to cost about $5 million a mile. So it's not going to happen overnight. But we've got our first 1-mile pilot project going to go into construction sometime later this month. And so we'll get an idea of how hard this is to do. We've got a second one under design, and that's actually about 3 miles. And then we're going to rely heavily on the Corps of Engineers to do some of the others. But we wanted to get some work done while they were trying to figure out how they were doing it. So we'll have about 4 miles done before they get started, but that's okay. And then we've got some money built into our further budget in the future to continue to do that work. It's going to take 20 years to get all those small diameter pipes out. But we will continue to work at that. So small diameter pipe replacement's a big part of it. We've been doing a distribution system. The whole system itself has got a model now that works, so we can model and see what different scenarios do for that. And we're looking at ways to create pressure zones in the system so that South Jackson isn't dropping out every time we have a problem. And we can do that, a combination of things. We can put in a booster station, we can put in bigger pipes. There's a variety of things we can do that are being analyzed right now. We'll pick the right solution, and we'll start that construction probably later this year. At the plants themselves, We've identified a lot of work to be done at O.B. Curtis. One of those critical things is the chemical feed system. So treating water, getting the right chemistry is critical. And right at this point, we've had just antiquated systems sort of cobbled together. We're getting all these systems going in, and we're also getting rid of the gaseous chlorine, which to add chlorine to our system, we use these big cylinders. They're 1,000-pound cylinders of chlorine gas under pressure. Maybe not a great thing to have around, especially near a neighborhood. Those are essentially weapons, terrorist weapons. And we have them stored at our plant, and we use them all the time. And so we're moving away from that. We'll do on-site generation of chlorine using salt. So there won't be anything dangerous there. On-site generation of chlorine has become quite a great way for water and wastewater treatment plants to manage their chlorine without having to worry about a big giant cylinder of chlorine that could be used against people. And then, so we'll continue to do other repairs, ultimately to get O.B. Curtis up to a 55 million gallon a day firm capacity. Right now it's technically a 50 million gallon a day plant. We don't have all the filters functioning on the conventional side, so we're down somewhere in 20 million on the conventional. There's a membrane side of the plant. Curtis, if you haven't heard this before, really two plants in one. That's the plant up in Ridgeland, up off the reservoir. There's a membrane plant where water is forced through tiny fibers, and the debris in the water gets filtered out by these tiny fibers. They're really small, like spaghetti noodles. It's hard to believe that water can get in there, but it's forced under high pressure. And then the water's very, very clean when it comes out of there. And so that's a very modern technology that was put in the mid-2000s, 2007, I think is when that one came on board. We didn't really have the maintenance capacity to take care of that. It's very sophisticated, and so we didn't do a really good job over the last 15 years of keeping that running. And so it hasn't been the workhorse plant that it is today. As we speak, there's 6 separate trains of these units basically, that have these fibers in them, and they're giant. And we're replacing 2 of the complete sets of fibers, and the Corps of Engineers is going to buy the other 4 sets for us, another partnership there. So ultimately by the end of this year, we'll have all 6 sets of fibers replaced, and the capacity of that plant will go from 25 to 33. Just the new technology with the fibers increase capacity and throughput for the water. So we'll get very close to that 55 in the not too distant future. The Curtis plant, the fuel plant, which is right on the waterworks curve off 55, is way past its end of life, and it needs its end of life quickly. But we hang on to it right now because we're still losing a tremendous amount of water. So again, maybe 30 million. I said 15 to 18 go through your meters. So we should only need to produce 15 to 18 on a given day. And we have to put close to 50 into the system on any given day. During the drought, it was about 58. Again, during the storm, it was almost 80. Yesterday, it was 44. But we got to get it down. We got to get those leaks out. And right now, we think the majority of the leaks that we're missing are going directly from broken water lines underground, leaking over and getting into the sewer system underground. So we never even see it. And so those are harder to find. And we're working on figuring out how to find those. But we do know, we had consultants in last week, that the Savannah Street plant, the sewer treatment plant, the sewage coming into that is 1/3 of the concentration that you would expect. Very diluted with drinking water. We also don't have a diurnal curve. So that means sewage treatment peaks. I'm a wastewater guy in the background. So you typically see a peak in flow early in the morning, go from very low to everyone gets up, using the bath, using the showers, making lunch, making breakfast, and then it drops during the day. It has this flat period of time, and then as you get home, it peaks again, and then it drops again. So there's these 2 peaks, diurnal peaks on sewage usage. When you look at the flow going into the Savannah Street plant, it looks flat. You don't see that change, meaning, again, there's some constant flow of a lot of water going in there. So we're getting the benefit of spending a lot to treat it and pump it, drinking water, and then treat it again after no one's used it when it goes to the sewer plant. So we got to get this figured out, and that's really the next hurdle for us. The Holy Grail is finding where the water's getting into the sewer system and get it out. So that'll consume a lot of our time and energy over the next year. Financially, we're struggling, no doubt. We're still carrying a tremendous debt. We're working with Congress to try to get language to be able to use some of that $600 million to retire the debt. But every month, so we're bringing in about $5 million a month from all you good ratepayers. First 1.6 goes to pay debt. And it's actually more like 2 million because I haven't been billed for the difference, which I just got the bills for that today. So every month, about 2 million is just straight off the top to go pay the debt, leaving us 3 million to try to operate a system that really requires 8 million a month to operate. So that math doesn't math very well at all. And so we're using federal money to help offset some of these operation costs in the near term, but that will end. We're 60 million into the 600 million, 10%. But of that, only 150 can be used for this operating type. So we're over not halfway, but we're approaching halfway using up the 150 million that we can actually have flexibility to use for operation. So we really have another year basically to figure out, get the revenue back up to where it needs to be, maybe retire the debt. So there's a lot of things going on in the back to try to get us in better financial shape. And we'll get there. Okay, we'll get there. But just pay the bills and we'll keep moving. And then, other projects that are on the horizon, we'd be shutting down fuel when we get to the fuel plant there near Waterworks Curve. When we get to the point where we've reduced the demand enough, we found enough leaks, we won't need it. And the Curtis plant's strong enough to make it. We have a 54-inch pipe that connects Curtis to the fuel plant. So there'll still be water storage there, and there'll be a pump station. So we'll still be pumping water out just like it does today at that location. We just won't be pulling it out of the river and treating it. So the costs go way down. We're only operating one plant instead of two. Much more consistent as far as the water comes. So lots of good things happen there. Maintenance cost goes down. So we're really looking forward to the point where we get that down and we can close that plant, turn part of it into a museum, and the rest of it's a pump station and a lot of storage. So it won't ever go away. You'll always have water at the curb. You can look at it and wonder why people always wreck there. I don't understand that. So that would be a big change, and that should happen over the next few years, ideally. I always maybe I'm a little bit over-optimistic on how fast we can do things. Nothing actually happens that quickly. So I think that's the big stuff, and I'd love to take your questions if you've got any, and see where else your minds are.
Ted, when you get the billing straightened out, what do you think your income could be on that?
Well,
you're taking the $5 million right now.
So we built the financial model and the rates to generate about 100 million, so 8 million a month or so. So and that there's two pieces to the financial model. I just had to publish a new financial plan. So one is if we had to continue to carry the debt. So we've got roughly $240 million in debt that we're making payments on. And we're really working hard to try to use the federal money to get that off the books because that would solve a lot of our problems. If we don't get the debt off the books, we'll have to do a 41% rate increase over the next 5 years. Ouch. Right? This community can't afford that. So it's really getting the debt off the books or we aren't going to survive.
What happens when you're only operating on one plant and low prices? I mean, will the water bill go down?
I don't think your water bill will go down. We need to use that to reinvest in the system. So the financial plan shows us generating cash actually in 2 years we're generating about 10 million that we can put back in the system on an annual basis because we can't rely on the federal policy to drop cash in here every 20 years. So the goal is to have 20 million a year generated to put back into the system on an ongoing basis, water and sewer. And that's actually a pretty good number for the value of the assets. If you're running a business, you want to put about 2% of the plant value back into the system every year to keep it up. And that's our goal. And we'd actually be about 2.5%. So then we would have money to do small pipe replacements, fix things when they break, add new technology, those kinds of things. And we'd be generating that ourselves without having to go further into debt. So yeah, don't see a rate going down, sorry. But the more we can cut costs, we may not have to increase it in the future either. And the financial model on our current, if we've got the debt gone, if the debt goes away, it shows basically an inflationary increase going forward to keep up with the costs that we're incurring.
The 680 million that is allocated, that's going to water repair projects, is that right?
Yeah, so 150 of it is to water, any water maintenance type and repair work. So the big costs there are the operation and maintenance contract we have running the water plants. That's Jacobs, which came to town, took that contract, and we're still not into a long-term contract with them. We've got some liability issues that we haven't satisfied yet. So that's on a cost reimbursement basis. So we're using federal dollars for that, which is really taking some of the pressure off of our ongoing operation maintenance monthly needs, because that's paid for with federal funds. And then find and fix, which is what you're seeing everybody out in the field working on the time materials. We've spent 20 or about 30 million on that, and that will continue until we get to the point where we're no longer having leaks all over town. So those are the two big things. There's a few other smaller ones. 450 million came through what's known as the State Revolving Loan Fund, which is managed on the drinking water side by the health department. And so those are, well, it says loan, those are what they call principal forgiveness loans. Essentially, it's a grant, but they can't use those language, I don't know, Congress. So those will be specific larger projects that will be spent down, and then that's also where we'd want to get the money to retire the debt. So in the plan, it shows 240 million of that being used to retire the debt, and 260 million of that, or whatever, 190 million of that on projects that we'd be putting in place to, again, get the system back to where it needs to be and much more reliable and sustainable. Yes, sir.
With the new metering system, is it necessary to still have a yard meter?
Yes, because you don't want to pay sewer costs on that water. So your house meter gets billed water and sewer, because that's how we measure your sewers, through whatever water you use. Because most of that water gets to the sewer. If it goes in your house, it goes down the drain, goes down the toilet. So that's the surrogate for water, sewer consumption. But the stuff you use in your yard doesn't get in the sewer, so you shouldn't have to pay the charges for sewer. And so I encourage anyone that does a lot of exterior water use to have that separate meter, because it's the best thing for you.
On the new billing system, I don't see where the wastewater has a charge anymore.
It's combined now. So your one charge is water and sewer. It's $6 a CCF, and that's both water and sewer combined. If you're a water-only customer for irrigation meter, it's only $3.
And what are the blue dots on the meters?
Blue dots on the meters mean they've been surveyed, they've been GPS. So we're actually going out with a team to get them mapped into our system so we know exactly where they are. And so they were shooting blue dot on there to show that they've already done the GPSing on those. So our new mapping system is very good, and now we'll have every meter and connection actually physically put into the system through this. And they set up with a GPS unit, and it goes right up and gets put into our GIS mapping.
So if I read this new billing thing correctly, the minimum bill that anyone would get would be $46?
Could be 40. If you didn't use any water at all, you're away for the month. You're second home in Paris, and
What's this other availability fee there?
So the
See, this side is
right. This is your
normal,
meter size, right?
and that
Correct.
Together. And then does this count too?
This is for irrigation only,
Only,
or
okay.
sewer only. So you would get a different, a lower availability charge if it's just sewer or just water.
Okay, so for like a family of four, I think they would save money on your new billing.
Potentially, but a
On a
family of one
family
may not.
On a family of one, I don't think so.
Correct.
It doubles.
There's winners and losers in all bill designs and rate designs. So great segue, because I didn't explain the billing, but the availability charge for most residential customers is going to be $40 a month. Because most of our costs are making sure that there's water available. The cost of the actual water, we get it for free. You could go out to the reservoir, get yourself a bucket. Won't cost you a thing. But it's the little bit of treatment, and that's just chemical and power at the plant. For the rest of it's all operation and maintenance of the infrastructure, it's people. Like, if you don't use any water tomorrow, we'll have the same staff show up at the plant. It's not based on consumption. And so, unfortunately, as a country, we've mispriced water forever. that there's a much bigger fixed cost to water than there is consumption. And so we've tried to change that somewhat here, and so the $40 a month availability charge means, and again, this is a hard concept in Jackson, but we'll always have water at your meter for you, and it'll be safe and ready to drink. That's the availability charge. And I think I can say it with a straight face, we're getting very close to make sure that happens. And then the consumptive charge is the same for everybody. It's $6 a CCF if you use less than 100 or whatever it is, 50 CCF. I'd challenge any of you to use 50 CCF in your house in a month. It's pretty hard to do through that size meter. You'd have to really crank everything wide open and leave it that way most of the month. You could probably do it, so I'm not asking you to do it, because that might be hard on us. But so everyone pays, and that $6 per CCF, and again, water, I'm sorry, we bill in 100 cubic feet, not in gallons, because y'all go to the grocery store and buy a cubic foot of milk. No, it's all done in, of course we should be billing in gallons, but we aren't. And that's a decision that was made long ago, and it's not unusual, most utilities that way. But for every 100 cubic feet, that's 748 gallons. And so for every it's $6 for every 748 gallons. So if you want to keep that math in your head, that's a little tough to do, but that's what it is. So any question to that?
Yeah, first of all, I just want to applaud you for the progress we've made.
Thank you.
It's great to see that. You mentioned it along the way, you mentioned that you beginning to replace the pipes, the water pipes in the streets. And that you got a lot of miles to go. And my question is, you say it's going to take 20 years to knock it out. Who's got the money? Who's got the plan?
So at the moment, we've got a number of our federal dollars allocated towards doing something. So a combination of the Corps of Engineers and some of that state revolving loan fund money that I talked about. Some of the projects are going to be done using some of that $450 million. Some's being done in the Corps. And then we're doing the rest of it as we move forward in the future is out of that generated pay-go we generate locally. So the plan shows we can do this over time, but again, that's if we're all doing what's in the plan, and we all know what happens to the plan. It's only so good to get punched in the face. No, it's so the plan really shows us generating enough revenue to continue that work for the next 20 years. And again, it's not every street; it's the small diameter pipes. Everyone talks about the infrastructure in Jackson being old. I hate to break it to you, not very old. I mean, you go to a northeast city or a midwest city, they've had infrastructure in the ground a lot longer than you have. Yours is a fairly new system. And so the fact that it breaks, is a combination of how we've operated it, a combination of your Yazoo clay, I won't say climate change deep freeze, I don't think climate change is allowed to be said here, but we have had unusual climate events over the last 5 years where we see significantly lower temperatures than we've seen in the past, and that causes the Yazoo clay to move and shrink and swell, and that puts pressure on our pipes. And so the combination of all this, and also the way we were running the plants. Remember I talked about we had to run high pressure just to get pressure through the system. We also have, and this is maybe way geeky and technical, but there's essentially 10 big pumps at the Curtis plant, and they're different sizes. So you got the largest is a 22 million gallon day pump. It's a big pump. And the smallest is 8. And to match the flow during the day, we've switched from different combination of pumps. And when we switch, they don't have a soft start. It's on and off. So we send pressure into the system in these waves, which really puts a strain on the pipes. And so we're working to change that to make sure that we have what they call variable frequency drives, essentially allow us to turn the pumps up and down within a range softly without sending pressure into the system. So part of the repetitive breaks, the challenges have been the high pressure you got to operate and the way we have to switch pumps to keep it going. So both of those are going to get addressed in the near future.
What are you replacing what kind of pipes are you replacing?
So the small diameter pipes are being replaced with PVC, so it's a plastic pipe. And they'll be 6 and 8 inch, they'll be much bigger. Minimum you should have on a water system today is 6.
Are
I
they,
guess they'll be scheduled APC.
It's a C something.
Okay.
Don't know off the top of my head. A detail, right? Got engineers for that. I'm an engineer, sorry. Haven't done any engineering in a long time. Anything else?
Ted, I know you're triaging things, but what about workforce development to keep the plants running?
Yeah, so it's been a big focus. We've actually got a strong, we've got a small and minority business focus going. We're working with Jacobs about, the problem with the workforce development piece is there's not going to be tremendous number of jobs. So Jackson's the only surface water treatment facility in central Mississippi and only one of a couple in Mississippi, and by far the largest. And so they have if they're fully staffed, they'll be around 50 people. And so you'll have a little bit of churn, but not enough to support like a community college program that's going to generate 10 or 12 graduates a year. You won't have a place to put them. So we're trying to figure out how to sort of walk that narrow line to help people look for careers in water, and then a combination of some internships and scholarships. We did establish a scholarship for someone to follow a technical study. We weren't forcing them in any different direction, but and that was done originally just for the community college. I think we're going to modify that to open up Jackson State and the other colleges as well, because we didn't get a lot of takers. Well, actually, we had someone applied for the first scholarship, accepted it, and then decided to go somewhere else to school, so it didn't work out. But we do have that with the Community Foundation. They're administering that for us, and we'll be seeking more donations for that at some point. But the scholarship piece, and we're really working hard with Jacobs, because they'll be if they are the long-term contractor, and we're pretty sure they will, they'll be the ones really needing to put people back in to maintain the plants. And we're using all predominantly local contractors for all the work you're seeing in your neighborhood, and they're going to need people to come work for them, trades people, and nobody wants to do that anymore. Everybody wants to go work in a computer and a quiet office. Actually, I don't want to go to an office, work out of their bedroom on a computer. But they're getting them out in the cold and in the mud and up to it. It's a little challenging all the way around for trades folks. We're constantly trying to figure that piece out. No great answer yet.
At the end of the receivership, who receives Jackson Water begin operating? Is it going to be Jacobs? Is it going to be separate from the city, reporting to the city?
It's a great question, a mystery yet to be solved. But yeah, so as part of my role, and the sewer order really clarifies this, is I've got to develop some sort of transition plan and figure out what we're going to recommend going forward. And does it go back to the city? Between us here in the room, that's really not a great option. I don't think that's feasible at this point. I mean, they just don't have the capacity, and they won't have operated the system for 4 or 5 years. I just can't see that happening. And I hate to see all the work we've put into the system, just go away. So I don't think, so part of the role, before the judge will release this order, he needs to make sure the system's working, it's financially stable, and it's got a strong governance structure, whatever that looks like. So there'll be a lot of back and forth on how to make that happen. Obviously, hot political topic. I can't really tell you where that's going to land, but I can tell you we are going to be focused on trying to figure that out. None of us that are involved want to see it return to where it was. Kind of wasted my 4 or 5 years here. I want to be proud of what we've done in Jackson. Not just for one little glimmering moment in time.
Where do you go to find out whether you're under a boil water watching?
So those are on our website. There's actually someone independent that's put I think, some sort of social media thing going out there. They get on Nextdoor. We put ours on Nextdoor. We put ours on Nextdoor. They put them on our website. We're working to the point where we'll have a yard sign, because again, these are largely in very small areas now. So when we're finished with our work, we put a yard sign up saying boil water notice, and we pull it back up when it's lifted. But we're trying to figure out the best way. But Nextdoor we're relying heavily on Nextdoor to get this put out right now. I wouldn't know. I don't do Nextdoor. I don't do social media.
Following a few different texts, this guy that lives in my neighborhood developed a text message.
And he takes his information from the health department's website, and he puts it out
it just
there.
pops up on your phone.
I think we're going to put a link to him on our website too. I think we haven't worried about that. So it's not great, but most of the time you don't have one. Once we finish whatever pipes and hydrants we're doing here, you're good to go. Yeah, we did a quick little video interview with some folks. I don't think this has been posted yet. Jacobs did some of this work HDR, our communication. Went to a few different cities where they got offices. Asked people on the street when was the last time they had a boil water notice. Most of them look like, what are you talking about? So again, Jackson's so conditioned to this weird world. And I still get questions in some meetings like, why haven't you issued citywide boil water notice? It's like, you haven't needed it. Well, then you're hiding something. No, we're not. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Can you address the status of lead in the drinking water?
Sure. We don't have a lead problem. I think that the history here was 15 and 16, 2015, 2016. So the requirements by EPA for the lead and copper rule, you sample, a system our size has to do 120 samples twice a year. And the samples have to come from people's taps in the morning, first drop. And so we've got a number of properties. You have to develop a sampling plan. You have to get properties to cooperate with you. And then we drop bottles off to them. They fill them in the morning. They put them back out. We pick them up and take them out. And so that has to happen every 6 months. And there's a current standard, and there's a lot of proposals out there right now for a revision to this to change that standard, but anything below 15 parts per billion is considered below the action level, because no amount of lead in your water is safe. And so that's why there's not just a safe amount. It's just, you don't take action, the utility doesn't take action, you technically don't have to take action on your own house if it's below 15. And the way they look at your 120 samples, if no more than 10% of them are at or above the action level, then you don't have to take it. You have to do anything. You essentially are saying your system's lead free. Lead doesn't come from us. It comes from you. It comes from your plumbing, it comes from your fixtures. Because we send the water out from the plant, there's no lead in it. The challenge has been to make sure it's not corrosive water. So if you have corrosive water, then it could leach lead out of your service line, out of your plumbing. If we had a lead line somewhere in the system, we could leach water out of that. So the goal in water treatment is to keep the water very neutral, not corrosive, not aggressive. And if you do that right, there shouldn't be any concern about the lead anywhere in the system. And so 2015, the second set of samples, so that from the second half of the year, we exceeded the action level in more than 12 samples. Meaning then we had to take action level. So the action that was taken was we had to commit to do enhanced corrosion control, meaning much more focus on making sure the water was treated to stay in certain areas, mainly in the pH world. We wanted the pH up enough so that it wasn't aggressive water. And so between pH and there's total inorganic nitrogen, and there's one more factor that has to be really carefully monitored to make sure that your water doesn't turn aggressive. And you sample your system constantly looking for that and where it leaves the plant. And so the very next sampling session in the first half of 16, they also had more than 12 of those samples exceed the action level. Again, talked about the enhanced corrosion control. And then we've never had that happen again. Continue to do these samples twice a year, 120, have never had more than 12 exceed. In fact, it's been much lower. It's typically 3, 4, 5. Again, we don't want anyone to have lead in their faucets, but this is how the standard has been put in place by EPA. So the fact that we haven't had one since 2016, so we're now in our 8th year without any exceedance. We do have the enhanced corrosion control in place, and I'd say one of the challenges has been, it's been really slow to get it there. Surprise. So in fact, the fuel plant has its enhanced corrosion control in place as of this past fall, and the Curtis plant had a different plan. We've had to get that changed with the health department, and we're actually executing that now, and we'll have that fully in place by August. So while we're in this, we haven't done what we said we were going to do, we have to continue to send these notification letters out to everybody in the system saying, lead's dangerous. You know, we had lead in the system in 2016. You know, not recommended for children and pregnant women. And but we don't have any lead in the system that we can find, really. I mean,
If you have some funny looking seeping water on your property, what should you do with it? Where can you take it or?
funny looking seeping water. Funny looking seeping water. So,
I will say where I live.
don't give your address, okay.
But is there somebody that can do a sample and tell you what it is?
Yeah, we could probably get a sample done for you, so if you want to call our call center might be a little confused by that, so you might have to escalate that one to me. So afterwards, let's let me get your information. We'll check that.
When they come out with the, you were gonna go through all the fire hydrants, I heard you speaking about that earlier. And when they go through and open those fire hydrants and flush them out or whatever, why would that cause dirt to come out of your pipes and your faucets?
So when they're flushing hydrants, it does disturb what's inside the pipe. So pipes, I know everyone wants to think that the pipe is nice and smooth and clean and looks beautiful inside. Water pipe doesn't really look that way. It's got tuberculation, it's got things that built up on the walls. And so when you change the flow, by opening the hydrant, you're suddenly increasing the velocity, you're moving a lot of water past. You can pick up some of that until it settles out. So in some cases, people, if there's been fire hydrant flushing in your neighborhood, often you'll have a little bit of discoloration for the next few hours.
A lot of dirt.
That's what happens. And
Well, how do you know when it's?
some of the dirt comes when we're doing the repair too. As we're cutting the pipe, fixing it, dirt gets in it, it needs to get flushed out. Some of it ends up going to your meter. In bad cases, we block the meters up and then you don't have any water. Again, we're trying to get all that worked out, but you shouldn't see much dirt.
Well, that was a lot of dirt that came through when we did that, and that was months ago. And I don't drink the water. I use a zero filter, but in the top where the filter is, there's dirt residue. So how do you know when it's drinkable?
So it's always drinkable.
Okay.
It is always drinkable, unless we've got a boil water notice, and we tell you to boil. But no, it's there's secondary standards. So EPA sets standards for water. There's primary drinking water standards, and there's secondary. And the secondary standards are not health effect standards, but they're color, odor, turbidity, things that you might see in the water that aren't going to affect your health because it's chlorinated. You get drink a little chlorinated dirt. No, I understand, but those are hopefully few events fewer and far between events. But
I see it every day.
well, you should. So we have an ability for you to call in, and we'll look for the source, and we'll actually send a scientist here, an independent contractor we've got working to come and sample your water and see what they can figure out what the cause is. So we have Dr. Jeanette King, an environmental firm here in town, but we'll do that. So if we can't figure out why, we'll have her come do it.
That's why I won't drink it because
Oh, it's good for you. Drink it up. Everyone needs to be drinking that water.
Today on Piedmont Street in Belhaven, as I was leaving for work, they turned off the fire hydrants and they changed one of the fire hydrants. And so water went off for a little while, but it wasn't long. And by the time I came home from work, they were finished. So hopefully that's a good sign.
Yes.
And I just wonder, do you have any experience with trash collection?
I do, but I'm not going to. I appreciate that. No, and I guess there's one more thing I was going to talk about on the water quality and condition act.
Is it worthwhile to discuss what happened between your department and the state health department, or is that something we should?
Yeah, we can. I mean, so Mississippi seemed to have adopted a more stringent interpretation of an EPA rule. So, so water in the United States, like most environmental things, have been delegated to most states. So the state actually has primacy for enforcing EPA's rules. But an EPA says you got to enforce them at least as strict as we've promulgated the rule, but you can go further if you want. And so in this case, and I don't know the history and why, this is a total coliform rule. So it goes back to our need to do monthly sampling, not at those 120 houses through their taps. We actually have sample taps throughout the system, 140 of those. And we take monthly samples there to test the water to make sure that what's in the distribution system is reflective of what we've sent out there. And that happens throughout the month. We don't do it on one day. Obviously, we have samplers go out every day to take some of the total 140 samples. And they take those samples, analyze them, and it's a routine thing. And one of the things they're analyzing for is the presence of fecal coliform, fecal bacteria, something that make you sick. And not sure how we'd get in there, it'd be pretty hard, but there have been cases where systems have tested positive. And so we do that, think about it, every month, turn in those samples. The only certified lab in central Mississippi is the state lab. So we take our samples to the state lab, just like every other water utility around here. On that particular day, we took a set of samples, Flowwood took a set of samples, they got analyzed, and 2 Flowwood and 2 Jackson came back positive for E. coli. And they haven't had a positive E. coli in who knows how long, so it's back up another fecal bacteria. So the way the rule, the EPA put the rule out is, if you see that, then you go resample those locations the next day. And if those are clean, then nothing's happened. And that's the EPA rule, because a lot can happen when sample and testing. I mean, it's not unheard of for not just water labs, health labs. A lot of people get, there's mistakes, there's humans involved. And so that's how that was built in. Well, Mississippi decided that they would issue precautionary boil water notice on that first test. That was sort of their standard operating procedure. And so we challenged them, why are you doing something different than the total coliform rule requires? They've actually made that change. They did an emergency change to that, so they aren't going to do that in the future. So we would have, we'll do the same thing everyone else in the country does, is you have the ability to confirm the samples with a second sample. And we did that, and we turned them in the lab, and that's why they lifted it the next day, as opposed to wait for their full 2 days and require us to do a complete. When they issue a boil water notice, we got to go to all those sample sites at the same day and deliver all those samples to them, and they all have to be clean, and then we got to do it again the next day. And so the odds of maybe an error in that, and collecting those samples, you basically take a torch to the sample collection place because it has to be sterile. And so the tap where you're doing, you heat that up, you fill up your bottles, you got to make sure the chain of custody is right, you got to keep them going where they need to go. So a lot of opportunity for error. You can't do that in the rain very easily because you get raindrop into your sample bottle while you're trying to collect a sample. That could contaminate it. So yeah, it's a tricky thing. It's amazing we don't have more, but we got great samplers. So there's they come from our lab at the Curtis plant, and they go out and do these samples there all the time. We are looking at, Jacobs is seriously considering getting a certified lab at the plant so we can do those samples without having to go to the state. So, and that's perfectly acceptable to certified lab. So that's what happened there. I think the other thing I was quickly going to say was on the water, drinking the water. A really strange thing is there's a correlation between income and education and drinking bottled water, and it's inverse. So the people with the low incomes don't trust the governance, the institutions that provide water. And the Manny Teodoro, professor at the University of Wisconsin, has written a whole book, Prophets of Distrust. So the people that build those water the kiosks, they put them in disadvantaged communities. They're preying on people that don't want to trust the water because they don't trust the institutions. And it's a great read. Prophets of Distrust, well, it's actually a pretty hard read. It's a lot of university professor study stuff, but it's just sad that we've got people not trusting the water, and the people that at least afford it living off bottled water or water kiosks, and that's across the country. And they've got the data to back it up. So one of our goals again is get people drinking water. Drink the water, even when you're filtered.
After it goes through the filter, I do drink.
Don't need the filter, but drink it anyway. Drink the tap. Everyone should be drinking tap water. Any other questions? Yeah, back.
Yeah, 2 quick unrelated ones. First off, you mentioned you have a fleet of contractors to do fix leaks and things of the sort. About how many contractors do you engage, and how many of those are local? Do you know?
So let's see. There's one that's Brandon-based. There's a bigger one that's Jackson-based. There's one out of Shreveport that's come up and doing a lot of work for us. There's one out of, I don't remember the community, a little bit south of us, blanking out. Pardon? No, they're actually from Brook. So that's not that far. So I think we've got truly a half dozen doing the water work. On the sewer side, we've got one local, truly local, and a couple from the region. So I think Delta's actually local. So we've got, I think, 5 contractors doing sewer repair. We've got 2 contractors doing sewer cleaning and inspection, and the vacuum trucks to come do that work. One of those is local minority contractor, and the other is a bigger regional firm. I think they're local headquarters out of Baton Rouge, maybe. So yeah, we're kind of spreading it out. And then our paving contractor doing most of our paving work is a very small minority-owned contractor here in Jackson. And they've done just an amazing job. So almost all the great patches you see come from there. They're proud. They're so proud. I get photos all the time. It's like, we're making Jackson look good. So it's been wonderful to work with them. So as many local contractors, and that's sort of what our small business initiative is about, and minority business, is there's still not a lot of capacity. And so we've done everything we can to break down some of the barriers by using time and material contracts. There's no bonding requirement because essentially we're issuing a task. And if they fail at the task, we go to someone else. We don't have to worry about getting someone else to finish the work. So very low risk, and we're paying very quickly, or we were until EPA got a little miss. We're going to get that back, but literally paying within days of getting an invoice, which a small contractor can't float for 45 days. So we're doing everything we can to break down those barriers. In an ideal world, we'll leave Jackson when the receivership's finished, whatever you want to call it. When we go to some other entity to run this, we want 5 new businesses that are minority owned here in Jackson to take on some of the work we brought in bigger contractors to do. And I picked 5 because I was meeting with Senator Horn early on, and I was talking to him about minority participation contracts, and he said the most successful project in Mississippi has been the Nissan plant. So what made it so successful? He said when we finished, there were 6 new contractors that didn't exist before. They were service providers to the Nissan, but they also were doing other business. And 2 of them had since gone out of business. So he said 4. I was like, okay, then we do 5. We're the most successful minority participation effort in Mississippi history. So don't know if that's all true, but our goal is to leave some very capable contractors behind, local Jackson folks.
Cool. The second question was just, is there a physical place you can go to pay your bill?
There's plenty of them on the back of your bill. If you look at the list on the back of the bill, there's a number of retail locations that you can go to.
Get closer. Thank you.
So they're throughout the community. They're open. They take your bill. We've encouraged that. Obviously, we don't have our own payment facility. We are going to have a couple of kiosks at some point where you can go pay your bill in person at a kiosk. Sort of in person.
Has the location for making application for new business, new service, has that moved?
That is on the website. That's all done electronically.
No physical?
No physical need. Or you can call the call center, they can walk you through.
Great.
You mentioned at the last meeting that you had here, that you were possibly wanting to separate the water bill and the sewer bill. Are y'all still wanting to do that? Or
No, we're trying to separate the trash. The sewer and water can combine.
Oh, okay.
But the sanitation bill is something we want to.
So how's that working?
Not yet.
That won't happen until we get another contract for
It'll probably happen before then. I think we're going to take the initiative to just separate the bill and you'll get a bill that will have City of Jackson seal, City of Jackson look and feel, and it'll just be for sanitation. And then the bill you get from Jackson Water will just be water and sewer.
Well, aren't they renewing the contract at the end of March?
And we're encouraging them while you're working on your advocacy. The trash contractors actually can bill residents and business. They've got that capacity. Most of them do that already. And then just turn it over to the contractor and let them collect it and get it. the city out of the middle of it.
Yeah, I can't see the city getting it together that quickly.
That's
So,
what I did.
in the meantime, we'll largely be sending that bill out as a separate bill coming out of our system.
Wait, they'll give you a call. Just wait and see how long it takes.
So you are moving into the trash business a little bit.
No, we're trying to get out of the trash business. We're trying to get out of the trash business. All right, well, thank you all so much for your attention.
We really appreciate all your hard work.
Well,
Dedication.
no, I don't do much. It's the team and the contractors and our very small. We got 26 people working with Jackson Water, and most of those are answering phones and solving billing issues.
We see back here.
Carla's back there, and
Appreciate it.
that's one of our contractors next to her. So yeah, we got interest from everyone shares the same interest. They want to see this succeed. They want to see Jackson not have water issues.
Yeah, and thank you for coming, because I think it just gives us some power back to us to be able to ask you questions directly.
Sure, anytime.
There's so much confusion. All right, y'all, so Jacksonians for Jackson, we want people to join us. We want to be all over the city in every ward. If you are not on our newsletter list, you can come and do this QR code. You can email,
There's a QR code on that thing.
QR code on this, email Laurie. Take some of these if you want to invite people to come. We're just an advocacy group for the city, trying to reach out across all the wards so that we can take some action, move forward together. Okay?
And the 29th of this month, we will be in Ward 4. And Brian Gazelle is the councilman.
Where are we meeting?
Grove, something wrong, it's Grove City, no. I think that's a Steelers one. Grove Park. Is it Grove Park? Is that the name? It is close to maybe Harvard and Northside Drive. We have the addresses down.
And we'll have all the information on the email, if you all sign.
Yes, that's why you need these, get on the newsletter list so that you find out the addresses and how to get there and when they start.
Yes, please join us. This is
We're on the list now, do we know?
That's right. How many are on the list?
Give or take 400.
So it's it's very organic, but we really want, again, our city's big and spread out. You know, we want not just to be heavy in some wards, but across the board. So this is our push for the next 6 months to go into different wards and have meetings.
If you want a carpool, we're gonna meet here at the Cedars at 5:30 or 5, I don't know, that'll be in the newsletter as well.
Yeah.
On the 29th, that's the extra day to get February. We're going that Thursday afternoon to that ward, and we're gonna meet some of our neighbors. We need to know the people in our city. And they
And
need
hear
to
their
know us,
ideas
and
and
we
talk
need-
about our ideas.
We just need to come together, and that, I think that will really help us. And they need to understand the advocacy, that we care about advocating for the whole city.
And the wards that we have gone to have been very receptive. So we're just trying to get our name out and brand ourselves and get more people in the circle.
On Monday, we will have visited with 3 of our city council. And that has been very, very beneficial, very helpful. And they look at us and smile, and that's what we want. We want people to realize that we are a positive force, and everybody wants something better. And we're not out to get anyone, we're out to all of us work together to improve it. So we've got only 4 more councilmen to visit with after Monday, so.
And I think this group was born out of just the reality that so few people participate in our elections, and that's weak, and that's on us. That's not on our leaders.
10,000 newsletters.
It's also correlated to bottled water drinking, by the way. It is.
Correlated to bottled.
It is. Higher bottled water drinking communities, less voter participation.
I'm gonna read that book.
You need to.
All right, things like this don't happen without funds and help. Fondren Renaissance Association lets us meet here 3 out of 4 weeks out of the month, and so we try to donate money to them. But if you all want to donate money to our cause at all, we're just trying to get some money together so we can do things together. Please, this is the money basket, and we need some money. All right, thanks y'all for coming.
Sorry.